Last Sunday morning we looked at a lesson entitled Promised Land, and it came from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, but dealt a lot with Joshua and the Israelites as they were getting ready to go into the Promised Land. Made comparisons between what they were going through and what we go through in our world. Today we want to do a companion lesson to it, I guess. Since yesterday was July 4th and we are celebrating the birth of our nation and celebrating the military, lots of things really, freedom. We'll talk about being strong and courageous today. And in Joshua chapter 1, verses 6 through 9, really as you begin that whole chapter, the Lord is talking with Joshua about going into the Promised Land. He sets up the event that what had happened. They've been wandering 40 years in the wilderness because their fathers, the preceding generation, had refused to obey God at Kadesh Barnea to go into the Promised Land. So he tells Joshua, and I want you to notice in here 3 times, and I'll repeat that a couple times down through this lesson. Starting in chapter 1, verse 6, be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. What an amazing passage from Scripture. See, as Joshua, the book of Joshua begins, the Lord's people are standing at the Jordan River, and they look across into the Promised Land. Hundreds of years earlier, the Lord had promised that land to Abraham and his descendants. 40 years earlier, they stood at Kadesh Barnea and looked into the Promised Land as children, the people who are standing there that day. Many of them were children that day. Many of them hadn't been born. They're going to be born in that 40-year period of wilderness wandering. But many of them saw it. Joshua and Caleb had walked through the Promised Land as spies. But here they are again looking into the Promised Land. Remember, they left Egypt where there was not enough, come into the wilderness where there was just enough, refused to go into the land where there was more than enough. So here they stand on the banks of the Jordan, looking into the Promised Land once again. What was the reason for that 40-year wandering in the wilderness? Their parents being, catch this please, weak and cowardly. Not strong and courageous, weak and cowardly, disobeying the Lord's command to go in and possess the land. In our text, the ancient promise was about to become a reality, right? About to become a reality. The people could see across the Jordan to what they had seen 40 years earlier, many of them as children. Now Joshua gets a pep talk from the Lord. A pep talk, right? Every now and then we need a pep talk. Yeah. Okay. Amen. It's actually a sermon for all Israel about not making the same mistake that their parents had made. Don't do it. The theme of the message, the Lord's message, is be strong and courageous. 3 times he tells Joshua, and it's to be repeated to the people, be strong and courageous. That's the message for us today, right? Be strong and courageous. Don't be weak and cowardly. Why? John chapter 10, verse 10. Listen to this. Jesus said, the Lord said, the thief comes only to what? Steal, kill, and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. The Lord wants us to have an abundant life. Are you living the abundant life that Jesus wants you to live? That's a thought question. If we are to live the abundant life Jesus promised, we must be strong and courageous. Strong and courageous, because that's how we get it. Not being weak and cowardly. There are people who want to lead us. They want to be our leaders. And what do they want to do? They want to steal. They want to kill. And they want to destroy. Brothers and sisters, that's no more clear than what we are seeing today on the political scene. They want to steal. They want to kill. They want to kill babies. They want to destroy our freedoms. They want to destroy God. Plain and simple. We must be strong and courageous in the face of an attack on our very existence. Because that's what it is. It's an existential threat against religion in general. Because, when they're done attacking Christians, they're going to go after everything else. Because we've seen it happen over and over again in history. Joshua had to keep Israelites moving forward. Remember, the Jordan River was a flood stage at that time. It was overflowing its banks where they were. How are we going to get over there? They had to be strong and courageous, right? Human behavior is both circular and linear. You understand that? Circular and linear. We tend to comfort zone and do the same things over and over again. Well, that was true with the Israelites, wasn't it? What had they been doing for 40 years? Wandering around in the wilderness, doing the same thing over and over and over again. Now, these things can be good, these things can be bad. Right? But what did they do in the wilderness? They worshiped God, didn't they? Now, you think about it. They worshiped God. The priests were there offering the sacrifices. They prayed. They did all the things that worship entailed in the wilderness. Going in circles, right? Did they get anywhere? What does that tell us? Just because we're worshiping God and worshiping God properly doesn't mean we're getting anywhere. Weak and cowardly people can do that. There's something more to the story, isn't it? So God, the Lord, was moving them from the circular to the linear. What do we mean? Linear. Moving them forward. Get off the circular, moving them forward. You know, that circular, I don't think I may bring it up later. If I do, pardon me for being redundant. Okay? What does that circular do? It's like a rut, isn't it? You know?
It is.
A rut. You know what a rut is? It's just a coffin with the ends cut out. That's what a rut is. Get out of the rut, you got to get moving. And here's the key. Here's the key. Moses was dead, and now Joshua's in charge. That's important. Folks, you know, I told you a lot about changes in words from Old Testament to New Testament, from the Hebrew to the Greek. You know that in Hebrew, the Greek Jesus in Hebrew is Joshua. Really, it's Yeshua, but it's Joshua. Think about that. From Moses to Joshua. From Moses to Jesus. Joshua had to keep the Israelites moving forward. There we go. Joshua had some advantages that Moses did not have. Now think about this. Moses was cast into leading Israel, thrown into the job, right? Joshua had 40 years to learn about leadership under Moses. Oh, wait a minute, Fred. I remember Moses spent 40 years learning leadership in Egypt under Pharaoh. Well, what kind of leadership was that? You do what I say. Right? Yeah, crack of the whip. And he spent 40 years in the wilderness with Jethro leading the sheep. Leading the sheep. The weak and cowardly. Sheep. Catch my point? Catch my point? He comes back. He's courageous for a while. He's strong for a while. And he gets them over there. And they don't go into the promised land. Okay? Well, what's he do for 40 years? He leads the sheeple in the wilderness. Joshua got to see a lot about leadership. But he got to see some other things. Moses ruled by a law that he had just received, and he was just getting to write it down, right? It wasn't only what was written in stone, the 10 Commandments, it was what he was writing down. What did we say? There were 613 commandments? I think that's correct. I think there's 613 commandments in the law. They write them all down. But he had just received it. Joshua had 40 years to go over it and learn it as he's judging the people. Understand? That makes a little difference, doesn't it? Moses led people who had tasted the Lord's grace. The Lord brought us out of Egypt. Oh, how wonderful! Joshua got to lead a people who had tasted the Lord's wrath, that wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Think there was a difference? Think there was a difference? Somebody said that which we achieve too easily, we appreciate too lightly. God did all the work of bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt. They didn't want to go into the promised land because it involved taking it. But Lord, if you just give it to us, maybe we will do it. Destroy those giants and tear down those fortified cities, and we'll gladly go in and just receive it. It's not how it works. Weak and cowardly. The weak and cowardly don't inherit anything from the Lord. We've got to be strong and courageous. In our text, the Lord instructs Joshua 3 times to be strong and courageous. If history teaches us anything, it is human nature tends to lead us or causes us tends to take the easy way out. That's what we want to do. We want to take the easy way out. Right? That's not where heroes come from. Think about David. Remember when David, the teenager, the young little guy, the ruddy little guy, he comes to the battle scene, right? Yeah, his older brothers who are warriors for King Saul are out there, and he come out, where's the fighting going on? You just come out here to see a battle. Oh, what's going on? What's going on? Then here comes the giant. Hey, send out your champion and we'll fight one-on-one. Whoever wins, the rest of us can just go home. That'll be the winner. And David says, why are you letting this guy do this? You know, this Gentile, this uncircumcised. Go in whatever you want to. Okay? You're just trying to be a big shot. You need to go home. They were weak and cowardly, weren't they? King Saul was weak and cowardly. But here's somebody who's strong and courageous. And David is one of the heroes of faith. He wasn't a perfect man. He was strong. He was courageous to fight for the Lord. So the Lord tells Joshua how to be strong and courageous. And listen, it's one thing to give a pep talk and say, be strong and courageous. But if we don't know what it means to be strong and courageous or how to be strong and courageous, does it do us any good? Yeah. It's like the pep rally at the school for the football team. Go out there and win, win, win. Coach, how do we do it? Cheerleaders, how do we do it? Student body, tell us how to do it. Just don't tell us to win, tell us how to do it, right? That requires practice, that requires planning, that requires a lot of stuff, right? So hey, let's look at 3 things here. I think I got 3 things that the Lord tells Joshua what to do to be strong and courageous and be successful. Number 1, stand on the promises of God. We sing a song about that, don't we? Standing on the promises. Or are we sitting in the premises? That's the old question that's always asked. What are you doing? Joshua 1:3. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon,